Software is logic, and business logic can stabilize brand momentum. When you can stabilize multiple dimensions of a brand, you can consider multiple threads of brand attention. If you can do math and can pay attention, then you can pay attention to trends and do math about which ones are worth paying more attention to. And if you have relationships with multiple people and consider which dimensions others find rewarding and which dimensions you find rewarding, you can create product or experiences that create services that you can offer. Learning and living in service are the key. There is history to mind. I live in the US and I hope a future exists. Some business advice is to try to do that thing, try to do the business thing in your context for 7 years. Actually, to understand that it'll probably take 7 years and try to become stable in the dimensions that you can consistently put attention towards. If you first study computer science, then you can consider which dimensions consistently scale and which dimensions are consistently taught towards describing systems. Why is it that millions of people begin learning how to code by studying these structures? And if you only know how to navigate these structures, which structures can you stabilize more consistently? Eventually, you can describe how to save a lot of money with software, but the caveat is not a lot of people will want to use software in that context. And when that context arises, if you have software that a lot of people want to use, you have another layer of support that becomes necessary. You can also journal with code. You can use structured language to navigate thoughts that you want to understand towards structure. And there is a market for creating experiences that help people consider the kinds of senses they want to. Bespoke software as a novel authoring experience. And with that, I would recommend spending a few years on BookTok to consider which dimensions of realized book experience and progressive narrative experience people actually care about. Then you can find a genre, practice within that genre, meet a few editors and readers, and stabilize an ecosystem. That model works, it exists, and it scales across millions of people. And in a context with supply chains, printing books comes with environmental wonder. What kind of paper, what kind of ink, what kind of promo? Are we spraying the edges? Printing flyers? Do we need servers running for a month to give people a generative experience? Like, are we going to run a $10 promo per day for a month on TikTok to get thousands of people to see the same page for a month? That's possible, it works for some dimensions of marketing. I have websites that are online sometimes, and the reason is there are different dimensions that I want to point to, and it requires effort for me to pay more attention than I already give. So if I onboard people to an ecosystem, I need to pay attention to the people who are new to the wonder that isn't already described. So I don't want to have my sites always in a state that's going to require me to spread my attention across people who might not actually care about developing towards the ecosystem relationship that I intend to offer. And part of the concept is as I go through this sequence in public, I build in public and I describe which project I'm releasing and which projects have media drops associated with them. Theoretically, someone can copy this pattern, and others are. So while people are applying to jobs in the old way, there is momentum towards just kind of building. And the question is now, if you can, as a software engineer, respond to the pardon, if you as a software engineer can respond to the KPIs that you are indicating you can, why aren't you doing that on your own? If you give people an experience that feels like it was just generated, they're going to feel worse. Unless they're the kind of person who likes that kind of experience. Although, if all you know about the experience is that it was generated, then which qualities are you going for? Like, which dimensions of human experience are we actually sharing? If you're already on TikTok and you're going to be doing the TikTok things, then I don't need to ask those kinds of questions. I can just ask you the kinds of questions that are relevant to whatever world I'm building. This video is about user experience. Can AI can we automate parts of engineering? Sure, but can we automate the reasons why people want to share communication in those forms? No. And part of this is that if it's easy for us to share context, if it's very easy for me to send you a lot of context, then I can just have a lot of context. Then, if you're sending me more context, I'm not sure which parts of it are redundant, and if you're making me try to figure out which parts of whatever context is redundant, then that's just frustrating. And if you're sending me redundant context, then it's just noisy. So the hard part is finding a balance between the amount of information that people want to relate to and the amount of information that people navigate via sending and receiving. Then there are a whole bunch of other roles in those dimensions. Like, you need people who read books to talk about books, so you have books to talk about. Then you need to adapt some of those books into movies, so people have that kind of dimension to talk about. In the process of adapting a book that people care about to a movie that people also care about, then there are people who actually pay attention to dimensions. And you need to stabilize relationships with a variety of artists. Some artists view themselves as professionals, and other artists view themselves as just pure creative forces, etc. So the question they'll ask is, if you can build websites, why don't you have one online? That's a pretty good question. If you want to be a software engineer, then having a website online is a pretty decent foot forward. Unless your goal is to address a different frequency, a different wavelength of engineering concern. For example, what happens when you care more about relationships than you care about performance? Acknowledging that performance can impact relationships.